Hello, everybody. You got Remington Huggins. You got Matt Mahalan here. Let me ask you a question. Are you still filing losses on the date of discovery?
What are you doing? This is the data discovery versus the data loss episode. Let's do it.
Data discovery versus data loss. What are your thoughts on this, Matt?
This is kind of controversial.
Yeah?
I kind of like this one. So there was a time when even my company, we were filing data discovery on hail and wind claims. And it worked out just fine. The thought behind filing data of discovery versus a data loss is if you don't know exactly when the storm occurred, then your idea here is that they would go back a year, maybe 2 years, depending on your suit filing deadline is for that policy or that state. And the carrier would go back through that amount of time and see if there was any kind of an event that could have produced that loss in that time frame to provide coverage. That's the thought behind it. But carriers don't usually do that anymore. So if they were going to go back through that amount of time and identify if there is a storm, then great. Maybe you've had multiple storms in that amount of time that could have produced that kind of a loss, and it allows the carrier to investigate a little bit more. But policyholder needs to prove their loss. And if it's a knowable date of loss, then you should probably file the date of loss. This is my thoughts on this. What do you think before we go any further?
I hate date of discovery. As an attorney, absolutely hate it.
Yeah.
And I can get in the weeds about it a little later, but it gives the insurance company so many outs and so many more defenses once it gets to in my hands that I hate it.
What do they do?
I mean, first off, thinking about the policy itself, it's going to suit limitations. It's 2 years from the date of loss. No one knows what that date of loss is, right? That's what or data discovery. Does
it start from the data discovery then?
No, that's the problem.
That's the thought that contractors and public adjusters who do this have, though, is they think that becomes the date of loss. And if that is the date of loss and there's no storm event on that date of loss, then what are you filing?
Yeah. And it gives them the defense that it was outside the policy period.
Yeah.
Right? You got to prove that a sudden accidental loss occurred during this policy period, especially with hail and wind, data discovery. Guess what the insurance company is going to do when it gets to my point? They're going to do a 15-year weather data analysis on it and find 17 different storms. Like
that happened 2 years ago and longer.
Yeah, when they weren't insuring the property.
Of course.
Yeah. So this is how I kind of view it. Just like you said, at All Good, I think it was something that was working. And it was getting popular, and that kind of spread. Mm-hmm. I know contractors were doing it more as well.
Hell, I even used to teach contractors to do it.
Yeah.
And now I do the opposite. Strategies change, carriers change, policies change, case law changes. Things don't always work forever. Sometimes you have to have a different argument. But right now, data discovery isn't working as well because the carriers are using that as part of the strategy of their defense. So if you say that the data loss is April 15th because that's when you did your initial inspection and you're saying this is when we discovered the damage, then they're just going to look at the weather data on August 15th and say that there was no storm on that date.
Right.
In the carrier system, there's a date of loss field that they fill out. There's no date of discovery field. So if you give them the date of discovery as the data loss, they're going to put that in the data loss field, and they're going to see that there's no potential storm that could have caused that damage. And then they might call it mechanical or vandalism or something.
Have you seen an insurance company estimate that says date of discovery? No. You don't see that.
Now, before we get too far into this, there is a date of discovery. That is a real thing, but it's for specific types of losses.
100%.
Yeah. If you could not possibly know when it occurred, then you'd have to do a data discovery. Seepage is one of those things.
Yeah.
We don't know when the water started leaking. It's been going on for a period of months based on the evidence of it, but we don't know when it started. We don't know the date the loss occurred. We have a hidden damage clause that says that they're still going to pay for it, but we're going to have to give them a date of discovery because it's unknowable.
Right. That is a fantastic point. Seepage, who knows? It could have started 6 months ago. It could have been 12 months ago.
Yeah.
But sometimes in the policies, there's clauses that say if the seepage was hidden between walls, that's actually a covered loss.
Yeah.
So in that point, you're exactly right. I always like giving this example as well. Is you and I go to Hawaii for 2 weeks. I come back and now my kitchen is flooded. I don't know exactly what date this happened.
Right.
But, hey, data discovery, I was gone for 2 weeks. I came back. Here it is. Like, that's just an example.
That's exactly right.
You're
gone. You don't know when it occurred.
Exactly.
So if it's unknowable, you're kind of stuck to doing a data discovery.
Yeah.
But if it is a knowable thing, and storm events are knowable because there's storm data, we have some kind of evidence of when it might have occurred.
Yeah. You know what's interesting I just thought about? If I was insurance companies, this is what I would do.
Because I like about to give them a better strategy to deny claims.
Yeah,
maybe
you know
we
what?
Don't do that.
Maybe I'm not going to do that. I retract. I'm going to keep that in the back of my head because they already have enough. But my idea is a really good idea.
You need to pay him.
Hey, State Farm, you can pay me, and I'll let you know how to do this. And this would work. I'm telling you. But yeah, and it's one of those things where, like you said, I think it was working on the ground level in the field with adjusters, like this data discovery. It picked up, but the insurance companies caught on because some of these claims got up to attorneys at some point, and the carrier's attorneys are like, what are y'all doing? Like, they have to prove that there was a data loss during this policy period, and that's the only way that we're liable for this loss. So I feel like, it's a trickle-down effect. I hear people still do it, and they're still successful.
Sure.
But I'm telling you, in the long run, you need to change your strategy. You just do.
I mean, a lot of times when they do it and it's successful, it's because the adjuster that's involved is a person that is being very helpful. But if it ended up in litigation with that date of loss still set as the date of discovery, that's probably something that's hard to overcome in litigation.
It is. And I think you touched on this before, like we have to prove the loss.
Yeah.
And that is a covered loss and that it happened during this policy period. And it just gives them so many outs. I'm dealing with one right now, and it's a super pain. It's just a pain in the butt.
Are you able to change the date of loss while in suit?
I have, yeah.
So it is changeable, and it's changeable during a claim. Let me say this. The conditions of the policy or the duties after a loss is that the policyholder is supposed to identify when the loss occurred.
Right.
And if they don't know when it occurred or if new information comes out, they're able to change what they are claiming. What they're really claiming is the damages. These are the damages, and to the best of our knowledge, this is how it happened, this is when it happened, and it's covered and it's during our policy period. But if new information comes out and it changes when that data loss is, the claim is filed on the damages, not on that event. You're claiming the damages from this peril and this date, but if the damages are the same, if you were to file a separate claim for those damages with a different date of loss, like they might try to force you to do, now you've got two claims for the same damages. That's artificially inflating how many claims you have on that property, which could make it easier for a carrier to go to a Department of Insurance and say, well, we've had a lot more claims than we expected to have. Let's raise our rates in the area.
Right.
I don't know why they became Gomer Powell just then, but
I have changed the data loss even in litigation. You got to strategically do it though, and I'm not going to tell people how, other attorneys, but you got to strategically do it.
That one you keep close to the chest.
Yeah, keep that one close to the to the vest.
This is why you got to hire remedy.
But there's another example that just popped in my head, and so I was just going to spit it out.
Yeah.
Is think about this: vandalism. That's a good data discovery, right? I mean,
you wouldn't know when it occurred necessarily, unless you knew that if you watched it happen, then you could file for vandalism, file a police report, and all that fun stuff.
Right. But like, for instance, we're in this beautiful studio. By the way, Matt, this is an awesome studio.
Thank you.
Not every day does Matt walk behind this commercial building and looks at the side of his, back wall. One day when he's back there, drinking a beer or something, talking on the phone, he finally sees where somebody did vandalize the property, right? Yeah. You're not going to know when that actually happened. So I'm just thinking about other data discovery is not for wind and hail.
It's for claims where the date of loss is unknowable. If the date of loss is a knowable situation. So let me ask you in this scenario then, what if there is 2 storms that happened within the policy period and either of them could have been the ones that caused the damage and the policyholder doesn't know because they don't get on their roof or look around their property very often? It could be one of these 2. Should they file for one of them?
I think they file for the storm data that's the best, that gives them the best storm data. Let's just say they're equal storm data.
Let's say they're equal.
They're equal. I would file on one. If this was me as the policyholder, I would file on one data loss, and then I would have my public adjuster talk to the insurance adjuster and be like, hey, by the way, a month before this loss, there was another significant storm. Look at this data. Which date of loss do you think's best? I'd kind of put it on him or her to make that determination.
Well, since you said that, I want to bring something up. For the public adjusters and contractors out there, especially contractors. Contractors cannot determine how a claim is filed. If you are telling a policyholder to file a claim on a specific date of loss, that is not a good idea. You are advising the client on this. You might be violating the unlicensed practice of public adjusting or the unlicensed practice of law. In some states, public adjusters doing this could be violating unlicensed practice of law. Depends on the state. Louisiana might, for example. You want to have the policyholder say when the date of loss was. This is when something might have occurred. You can tell them your opinion. I think it might have occurred on this date, but they need to be the ones that make that decision, especially if you're a contractor. You're only telling them what evidence you've found, but they're the ones filing the claim. Don't give advice on how to file a claim. All right? This is when we think the damage occurred. Do you think the damage might have occurred on that date? It was a significant storm? Yes. All right. Well, maybe that's the date of loss then. When you call them, they're going to ask you for the date of loss. That might be it.
Let me ask you this. Can a contractor, in your opinion, say, hey, Mr. Matt, I just want to let you know I've replaced 5 roofs in this neighborhood for this data loss. I'm just giving you information.
Yeah.
You take it and run with it.
Absolutely.
What about if they go, hey, Mr. Matt, here's some weather data I'd like for you to review,
100%.
And you make a determination from that?
As long as they're not just saying, and you're the attorney in this situation, not me.
I swear, when I was going to call him Attorney Matt. I swear, because I was asking the questions. But
I'm not an attorney, and this is different for every state. So be skeptical of everything that I say. But if they're providing information for the policyholder to make a decision on when they file a claim for their own insurance and their own contract, as long as they're not telling them how to do this, then they're not necessarily advising the client on how to file a claim or how to deal with their policy. And that's the key, is you're not supposed to be advising them on how to work with this contract, this insurance policy.
Right.
Does that sound right?
Yeah. And me thinking as an attorney-wise, like, I see nothing wrong with a contractor telling a potential client, I replaced X amount of roofs and they submitted on this data loss. To me, there's nothing wrong with that.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that either.
You ask 10 different
providing
attorneys.
Information, not telling them what to do, though.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So, also, a document, obviously not at the claim filing process. Maybe sometimes it is, but it's the proof of loss where it's the homeowner signing off on that data loss.
Yeah.
So
that proof of loss is a legal document. Public adjusters in many states are able to prepare the file by filling out a proof of loss form. A contractor should not be filling out a proof of loss form.
Absolutely not.
But putting together all the evidence that would be attached to a proof of loss form is something that a contractor can do because they are doing investigations. You can identify damages to a property if you are a contractor, because you can identify when a property needs to be fixed as a contractor. So you can be trained to identify what happened to it in order to identify how to repair it properly. So you can absolutely put together an inspection report, an estimate, weather data, all this kind of information to provide to the policyholder so they can make the proper decision to file a claim. But it's up to them on how they do that. So I just wanted to pause us and talk about where that line is, where UPPA, for a lot of contractors, don't tell them what the data loss is. They need to be the ones that make that decision, and they need to be the ones to make the decision on whether or not they believe that there is a claim to be filed.
Yes. And since we're just on this topic, I'm bringing this up because I had a phone call about this probably a month ago. It was a public adjuster, and they asked me, is it okay for me to sign and notarize the proof of loss for my client? Don't do that. Have the client actually sign the proof of loss. Don't do it as a public adjuster. I'm an attorney that represents individuals. When the carrier asks for a proof of loss, I would never sign for the client. Have the client notarize that proof of loss.
Because it's a legal document, it's very, very official, like extra official.
I mean, I think it even says,
official.
typically it says insured's signature. You know,
if you were to have a power of attorney,
I still say no.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Because that was the second question the public adjuster asked me, and I said no.
I mean, there are times when having a power of attorney is beneficial if the policyholder is like out of the country and there is something physical, like a check that needs to be signed off on with a power of attorney.
Right.
But if this is a digital document that could be sent to them and it could be e-signed, or they could print it out and have it notarized wherever it is they are and then submit it back, or there is such a thing as a e-notary, or over a Zoom call you can have things notarized these days even.
Yeah. Yep. We do.
So
that.
there's plenty of different ways. Well, since we're on that topic, this is off topic, but what if the public adjuster has a notary in house?
Yeah, completely fine.
That's okay.
Yep. So I have,
as long as it's the policyholder that's actually signing.
Exactly.
Okay.
And my law firm has a notary in house, and that's how we do the proofs of loss.
That works for me.
For the majority of the time.
Should a proof of loss always be notarized?
If they ask for it.
Do you think the signed proof of loss, the signed portion of that, implies notarized? Or sworn, signed, sworn proof of loss? Does sworn imply notarized?
I mean, to be notarized, it needs to have the stamp.
Yeah. I know that there are definitely arguments to be made that it doesn't necessarily mean that. It just means that they're swearing to it and they sign off on it, signed proof of loss. But I don't think that's a hill worth dying on. I would just get it notarized.
Get it notarized.
Yeah.
I mean, let's not give the carrier any ammunition to try and technically deny the claim on a technicality.
All right, so if it has to be on that proof of loss form, then fine. But there's a reason that it's there. All right. If it is a knowable date of loss, you should have a knowable date of loss. You should find the date of loss. Find the reason it's that date and it's within the policy period. And honestly, if you can't do that, you're going to have a hard time proving the loss anyway.
Exactly. If you do not have a true date of loss on a roof claim,
or any claim,
don't file the claim.
Yeah.
Just let's not file frivolous claims and say, oh, data discovery.
Yeah.
You're
just throwing Jello against the wall.
Exactly.
Which is basically what the whole strategy was for this, was that let's see if they can find a date, because we can't.
Right.
You think the carrier's going to find a date when you don't? You think they're that nice? No.
Unless, like we said, unless there's like two dates of loss that are close by, if I was which I've been an attorney in this situation where I was brought in on the onset of a claim, there were two dates of loss. I met the adjuster out at the property, had this discussion. Hey, let him decide. Let's roll with July 27th. All right, perfect. Let's go.
All right, here's a good question though. If it's a public adjuster, which often gets involved after it's been denied, contractor might have given a data discovery as a thing.
Yeah.
What can a public adjuster do at that point if we really need to change it to a specific data loss?
I would, number one, have a conversation with the insurance adjuster and say, hey, I want to change this proof of loss. Data loss. If they were like, no, we're not doing that, then I would file a proof of loss with the data loss that you think it is, with the good weather data showing that the evidence proves that this is the data loss.
Or if you don't have weather data, which is often, but you have something, maybe ring camera footage or testimony from the policyholder or the neighbors or something, any kind of evidence that storm data is, or that storm date is the right date.
Right.
And you can have the date of loss changed on a claim. Even if the carrier says, no, we can't do that, you need to file a new claim. don't file a new claim. It's the same damages.
Right.
Don't file a new claim. But I do agree that a proof of loss should be submitted with the corrected date of loss and an explanation.
Yep.
And maybe make that something that is written out as a letter. Here's an explanation. Write it out as a letter, submit it to the carrier without the proof of loss as well, but then attach that to the proof of loss as your explanation on why the date of loss has been changed or needs to be changed in the system. This is an editable thing in the carrier system. They can just change the date of loss upon new information being discovered. And they need to do that. You need to have a reason why it should be changed. But if it is a knowable date of loss, just have the date of loss. Stop filing data discovery. Even if it's working for you here and there, it is causing more problems than you know. Most of the time when you guys are filing a data discovery, you know what the date of loss should be. Just do that data loss, even if the weather data isn't great for it. Weather data is wildly inaccurate anyway. There's plenty of ways to overcome bad weather data. There's plenty of reasons why a roof or a house would still get damaged, even if it is low-grade winds or small hail. Wear and tear might actually be something that you need in order to say this is the story. It's because the roof was really, really old that the hail was able to cause damage, and that's why the small hail was able to cause damage. The hail still caused damage. It's still covered. Don't be afraid to talk about the wear and tear. You might need that to sell the story, but you'd need the data loss, guys. You'd need it.
You do.
It's important.
You need it, and like Matt said, I think just giving a simple explanation of why this other date was brought up prior in the claim or previously in the claim, they should change it. They can change it.
Mm-hmm.
So
if they force you to file a new claim, then you're just filing two claims on the same amount of damage, and that's a problem. I would even file a complaint with the Department of Insurance if they're really forcing you to do that in order to gain the benefits of the policy.
Right.
Because and they might even tell you, if you file a new claim on that date, we'll approve it, and then they don't. Schmucks. That's happened to me. So just don't believe it, because it's a completely separate claim. You're going to get a different adjuster, and they're not going to know how all that went down, and it's not going to be on record anywhere. Come on.
They can even change the cause of loss in the middle of a claim.
They absolutely can.
So,
new information comes out, and they do that all the time when they say, well, it's not hail damage, it's mechanical, or it's vandalism, or whatever they might want to call it.
Exactly.
That's a different cause of loss. And whatever the estimate comes out with, here's a good question for you. If the estimate comes out and they've said it's mechanical damage in an engineer's report, but then you get an estimate, it still says wind and hail on it, it doesn't say mechanical as the cause of loss, does that mean that they still believe that it's wind and hail? Or now that they're saying it's mechanical on a denial letter, is it automatically changed?
Well,
what is the most important information?
Well, if they came out with an estimate, then it wouldn't be denied, right?
Well, maybe they have a partial denial.
Okay. And it just still says wind and hail?
Yeah.
I think you could definitely use that. I know what the insurance company is going to say. It's like, we put on the Xactimate estimate what the claim was filed for. So we leave that in there. I think that's what they would say.
And also, mechanical is not part of the drop-down menu for it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, the only thing that's in those drop-down menus a lot of times is the named perils.
Yeah.
So even if you have open peril policy and something ridiculous happens that isn't excluded in the policy, there might not be an option for that. Maybe there's an other.
Is car crash into building an option?
It depends. Did it come from the sky? It could be a falling object. I guess. I don't know.
We're going to find this out, folks.
Yeah. All right.
No, that's great. Hey, bottom line is get a data loss. Yep. Use a good date of loss. This data discovery situation, the carriers have caught on to this. It might have worked in the past. I'm telling you, they're clamping down on this.
Unless it's unknowable.
Unless it's a peril, a loss that actually a data discovery is used for, which Matt and I have hit on, such as vandalism or seepage or a pipe burst when you're out of town, things of that nature.
Unknowable stuff.
Exactly.
I think we got it. All right. There's another episode with really good nuggets all over it. We only have big nuggets.
Good stuff.